Welcome Magic the Gathering players to my review and upgrade guide of the 2021 Pioneer Challenger deck Azoriusspirits. I'm gonna be upgrading this deck for $5, $10 and $30. But first, let's review the strategy of our deck. This is a Spirit tribal deck that likes to utilize a lot of flying and flash creatures to stay on top of our opponent's game, counter their spells and beat down with aggressive flyers and lord effects. For $5 upgrades, we're gonna be adding in 2 Mausoleum Wanderers and Mystical Dispute into the sideboard. It's strange that 4 Mausoleum Wanderers weren't included into the original deck, but it's very good to add 2 additional ones because it's a 1-mana aggressive spirit that also helps protect the rest of our board later by countering something like a removal spell or a board wipe. The Mystical Dispute is a very good sideboard card, but it's mostly there because we had some budget left to spend. It can help protect us from a lot of our opponent's interaction, and that's very good. Sadly, we couldn't afford more than one in our $5 budget. We're gonna be cutting 2 Spellpierces from the main board and an Isolate from the sideboard. The Spellpierce seems like a bad version of Mausoleum Wanderer in an attempt to only include 2 copies in the main. We're gonna be removing Isolate from the sideboard because there's not a lot of relevant 1-mana permanents in Pioneer currently. There's also 2 additional copies in the sideboard, so I don't feel we need this one. For the $10 upgrades, we're gonna be adding 2 Mausoleum Wanderers and 2 Spellquellers. The Mausoleum Wanderer I've already discussed. It's a very good spirit that also protects our board, and similar with Spellqueller, it's a 2/3 flash flying with an air spellfield. It basically counters a spell with convert mana cost 4 or less. That's very good because it flashes in, can help us beat down, it's a flyer, but it also protects our board from something like a wrath effect, or some removal spell, or something our opponent might do to catch up. We're gonna be removing 2 Spellpierces earlier discussed, and we're also gonna be removing 2 Remorseful Clerics, because this is more of a sideboard card. But don't fear, we're gonna be adding them back into the sideboard by removing 2 Silk Wraps. Silk Wrap is an enchantment which doesn't really synergize with our deck. It's also a 2-mana thing, which also doesn't feel right because we have a lot of powerful 2-mana plays we would like to play instead. Silk Wrap also is removable for a creature, which doesn't feel very good either because we're in an aggressive deck that doesn't really want to take a turn off to remove something our opponent controls. For the $30 upgrade, I would recommend picking up all the previously mentioned cards and a copy of Azoriusspirits Challenger deck for $20. In it you will find 4 copies of Skyclave Apparition. I would recommend putting 2 into the main board and 2 into your sideboard. I would also recommend taking out the 3 Mystical Disputes that you will find in the deck and adding them into your sideboard by removing 3 copies of Isolate. We're also going to be removing 2 Sillaways from the sideboard and 2 Lofted Knights from the main board to make room for the Skyclave Apparitions. The Sillaway is a pretty good card, but compared to Skyclave Apparition, which is much better interaction, also on a body of a spirit, and that only gives our opponent a token when it lives, it's much better. Lofted Denial is also a pretty good card, but we don't want to take a turn off on turn 2 to pass the turn and hope our opponent plays something that we can counter with it. We want to be aggressive, and that's why we're going to be adding Skyclave Apparition instead for a bit of interaction. My thoughts. In my opinion, this is the worst of the 4 decks gameplay-wise. For me, this wasn't very fun to play, although I'm a control player at heart. I have the deck here next to me and I've upgraded it for myself and played with it a lot, and I've found that land base needs a lot of work and love, and I'm not going to cover that in this upgrade guide since the land skin gets very expensive. You would probably like to add a playset of Hallowed Fountain if you were building this deck from scratch or upgrading it with a higher budget. For me, I've added in Port Town and Irrigated Farmland to get some sort of more consistent land base, but it still isn't very good, so I'd recommend putting some more attention into upgrading that. Otherwise, upgrades I've made here today probably make this deck a lot more competitive than it is out of the box compared to the other 3 decks I've mentioned. But I think it's strange that this deck was made mono blue by the Wizard of the Coast, since that would have been way more powerful on a budget. I would say, if you're a new player or you really like Azoriusspirits, then this deck is for you. Otherwise, just build your own mono blue Spirits deck or buy one of the other Pioneer Challenger deck precons. This was my upgrade guide and review for the Azoriusspirits Pioneer Challenger deck. If you ended up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing or leaving a like, because I'm probably gonna do more of these types of videos in the future. Goodbye.